Chapter 13.6 Ivan. He was the last one I had made friends with in Raduzhny, and probably the one so far to break off. I mean a real friend, so we could socialize together, visit each other, and so on. Ivan. Both charismatic and stupid. That's why I stayed in touch with you for so long. But your stupidity was becoming less and less bearable to me. Sorry about that. He was my wife's friend's husband. She was a witness at our wedding. Before the wedding, I went to get a tape recorder from them. We had nothing yet. On the following day, I met a friendly guy on the street with a smile on his face, offering his hand. It was him the night before I took the tape recorder from, and I didn't even recognize him. That's how we became friends. He had himself on the right side of me by the first minutes of his openness and friendliness. Later, though, I learned to be wary and alert of such friendly persons. These were often to set me up and betray, but not Ivan. Ivan had some beautiful Ukrainian wife who looked like Ovsyanina movie character in the Soviet The Dawn Here Are Quiet. When he first saw her, he immediately asked her to marry him, and she shocked said, "Hey dude, are you out of your mind?" Apparently he wasn't, since 6 months later she had married him. Ivan, being handsome and a jelly rider himself, could not get enough of her. Just one night without her and he'd start to fade and would go bad. He loved her so prohibitively much on some very hormonal levels. Yet Oksana, despite her hypersexual husband that many women simply could not stand, had managed to start an office affair with someone that had gone so far that once Ivan caught them both red-handed in his apartment. I can't figure how it didn't ruin him, or how he didn't kill her, or them all. The way he had loved her. God, he had loved her. That's why he probably forgave her. Sure, he was right, and he had never brought this up, ever. And she was really good. A feast for the eyes. There was a moment when she almost seduced me, and I had to fight hard to overcome my temptation. I went to visit him on some business, and he wasn't home. Oksana opened the door, and she was in a beautiful gown, through which I could see her beautiful breast without bra. And the moment I saw them, I was kicked on, and she was immediately turned on by my last eyes. There should be a separate chapter written about Oksana, this beautiful and ambitious woman who had achieved a lot. And the handsome son Gena as well. But this chapter is not about them, it's all about Ivan. He is from the ones we call grassroots, the working people, from a village of Mordovia. So remote that, according to Ivan, the first telephone set he ever saw was when he was in the army. After the army, he went to the north. He had found a good roughneck job, made good money until the 90s. Came along when I met him. All seemed to know him in town. When we walked through the town, all just kept saying hello to him. And he was good at chatting up the girls too. Once we went to buy me a washing machine I saw on ads, which were then bartered for crude oil and brought to the town. While I was discussing the price with the owner, Ivan was flirting with her roommate, bringing up Pushkin's poems. Wow! By the way, there were a lot of large books at Ivan's apartment, like Karamzin's History of Russia, Bulgakov, and so on. He liked to refer to and quote famous people in his conversations. Something, I still could not understand what it was very naive in his judgments. But he was good to socialize, so my wife and I often visited them or vice versa. There was something about him and Oksana. In the army he served in the border security forces. He was promoted to sergeant major. A man who before the army hadn't seen a telephone set. Perhaps he had some qualities, the authority must have noticed them. The same qualities I can only guess about, I still wasn't sure what they were. Must have helped him amount to something later, a lot later. In the north, he quickly got to his feet, but the 90s nearly killed him. He was desperate and angry. He was very angry with Yeltsin and the Gaidar's government, and he did not understand how could I be so happy about all this. And I was happy, as long as the communists are not coming back again. I and my wife bought a one-bedroom apartment not far from Ivan's in 1994. And Ivan and Oksana, the year before, they were given a good two-bedroom one by the state. By 1995, we had a lot of expats in town and our companies needed interpreters, and beginning with this year, and especially next year, things started turning right for me, and in 1996 we bought a big three-bedroom apartment for $7,000 US. A fortune for us at that time. 11 years later, we sold it for $80,000 US. We renovated and finished it and left Ivan and Oksana behind. Just in 3 years. I had nothing and now I had everything but a car. But I didn't want the car and the garage. My wife wanted them, not me. I preferred to buy something I dreamed all my life, like some good hi-fi stereo. Our first purchase, as I wrote, was a washing machine, and the second thing we bought with Irina was a Japanese TV set. And since then it was like plain sailing. Irina would buy some furniture or a bedroom set, and me a hi-fi CD player or an amplifier. We both had motivations to make money and often argued due to differences in our priorities. Ivan had no luck with his work yet and was very upset about it, especially his Oksana. I felt, and later Ivan confessed to me when we drank with him, that she held up his friends, more successful businessmen or even us, as an example to him, like, look how Radek was when we first met them, and look at him now. Ivan was trying to start and run a business. He tried to set up a supply of valves to oil-producing operators, but it did not work. I tried to get him a security guard job in a joint venture I translated. It never worked too. All this time he was taking training courses in some shady schools with purchase certificates and licenses, and he was even thinking of buying him a diploma. Then he finished some St. Petersburg appraising training courses and got the appropriate certificate so he can legally practice his appraising business, and he went to it. Started making some casual earnings. He also worked as an oil-producing operator security guard. I hoped that he had learned something in St. Petersburg, because I noticed that he was allergic to numbers and he avoided them whenever it was possible. He even skipped the camcorder using manual specification sheets because of these numbers. It was hard for me to imagine him being the appraiser. Oh, well. I have never made a secret, and you have probably noticed that I am a moderately envious as a moderately ambitious, which is the same thing only with the opposite sign person. I'd never been jealous of Ivan, though, because of our different starting positions, for one thing. Well, it's like a lover who is not jealous of his love mate to her husband, you know. I mean, he already had everything when I started with nothing. In 3 years, it has changed dramatically. I had a bigger and better furnished apartment. I had a good job now. With my little daughter, I took a trip to Cyprus where we had a good time. However, soon after this country's payment default, I lost my job. Ivan wanted a good car for all his life, so he went to Taliati, a Russian Detroit, to buy a Lada car. He didn't buy it. During the Russian government default to pay its debt, the prices for everything skyrocketed. He came back without a car and was very angry. "I hate Taliati," were his words when he returned. He bought a car anyway. A Volkswagen Passat of 1990. That meant it was almost 10 years old and looked even older. He paid like $8,000. They bought it from some Dagestani family and he was very happy about it. I was indifferent to the cars, but even I, not being a car expert, saw that the car he had was driven into the ground. The engine was not running stable. The lambda sensor needed to be replaced. Not only that, a tape recorder, that's what I knew well, installed in the car, was of some illegal Chinese no-name manufacturers, which sounded disgustingly bad, and one channel was fed to all whizzing speakers, so there was no stereo. Not even close, and its front panel spectrum analyzer indicator simultaneously displayed all its frequency ranges, just like one bass frequency range. Just meaningless color organ, that's what it was. But Ivan was happy with all this, so I didn't criticize anything. Just didn't want to spoil his party. The fact was that he had overpaid for the car. He must have wanted it bad, just as I wanted my first Japanese tape recorder once. I finally went to university and found a good job. And Ivan got a job as an engineer in a housing department near my place. And he was proud of it. He said he was busy preparing the municipal service provision there and mastering the computer all at the same time. Good deal. They sold the car though for $4,000, and they thought that was a good deal. Some serious steering problems came to light. His Oksana was a very pushing lady. Her friends told me that she was an active Komsomol member and even a leader. She was very active and initiative at work too. However, after the office affair, she had to leave the company, but she quickly found a position for her education in one of the first joint ventures, where she quickly made a career and took the accounting manager position. Now she was not only the beautiful one, she also became one of the coolest, famous and influential women in town. Now she had a driver. Being a woman full of ideas, she went to her bosses with the tax optimization program, which would save the company fortunes. She had the okay. I had noticed that all more or less ambitious persons sought to move to Moscow. I had a good chance for that myself back in 1990. I also noticed that those who were frequently to Moscow on their business trips soon would move there. Not moving to Moscow perhaps was a major mistake of my life. Maybe as a warning I should write a chapter on that. But I just don't want to bring this up. I just don't want to. Oksana often went to Moscow, and on her returns she admired fashionable Pankins concert. Yes, she liked it there. Nevertheless, her decision to move to Moscow was unexpected to everybody, and a major shock to Ivan. He had just finished his apartment's chic renovation and put plastic windows. Finally, he found him a decent job, and his appraising business started paying off a little bit. But it wasn't him to decide for his family. After Oksana's tax optimization initiative has been set in motion and a lot of money was spared for the company, Oksana would expect some reward for that, which she had never received or received not that much she would have expected. She told me on the phone about that, all in tears and sipping her red wine. After some time, the company started running into trouble. The tax authorities have revealed some major tax evasion violations in the company. In general, it all ended up sadly for this company. The authorities took away its license. This was her reason for the decision to move to Moscow, especially since they already had an apartment there. The one in the most prestigious areas of Moscow, like Fifth Avenue in New York. Sure, there must have been something Oksana has pulled off. So Ivan went through the onset of severe depression, which I had never seen before in him. I am actually the first aid for troubled women, not men. I'm not the therapist either, but I began to worry about Ivan. He called me at work and I had to listen to him patiently. He was scared of Moscow. He was a rustic man brought up to be his family boss, and he wasn't. And that he had hands of gold. I saw myself more than once on how he turned his apartment around and when he helped me to renovate my apartment. And he was ignored by a woman. And he even told that he no longer wanted to live. And that was said by the always cheerful and vivacious person I knew. So they sold the car Ivan loved so much. They sold their luxury apartment to a cop. And they bought the car in Moscow, Suzuki Liana, a brand new one. I don't know about Oksana, but Ivan felt bad for the first 2 years in Moscow, really bad. He had no work in Moscow, and his wife was hard on him, bugging him all along. He was talking of divorce or about going back to the north to work as a roughneck again. However, he went to the Plekhanov's University of Economics, to the same appraiser training courses again. He complained that he did not understand a thing in those lectures. Moscow didn't seem to like him much. I felt sorry for him. Nevertheless, he finished it, and in a year he got a job and he was assigned to lead an appraisal company which suffered losses. By the end of the year, he led the company's balance sheet to self-sufficiency and even to some small profit. He wrote me all about it. Now he knew how to use email. It was cheaper than using the phone. But according to the results, the company has reduced his salary. Ivan did not like it. He resigned. By the way, when we began to communicate with him by email, I was shocked. I was so shocked by his blatant illiteracy. In each of his words, he had at least one misspelling. Whenever possible, I tried to turn my blind eye on things like this. Well, bad luck, my mom and dad had a natural literacy and I inherited it from them, unlike my brother and sister per se, as expected by Mendel's law. They were illiterate in writing. Moreover, my wife and daughter had the same problem, the same incorrigible misspelling. So I started to get used to it. But his level of spelling was beyond all my understanding. It was impossible. He was the surgeon in the army, for Christ's sake, almost an officer. He read books, constantly citing Pushkin and Karamzin, for crying out loud. He is, after all, a mid-level manager in Moscow. Pretty is as pretty does. Well, I gently advised Ivan to work a bit on himself. He huffed. Not only his wife in Moscow was eating his head off, now I had joined her in that. What kind of friend was I? Ivan slowly was taking roots in Moscow, but still didn't like it. Yes, now from Moscow he was much closer to his village of Mordovia, and he repeatedly drove there in his car. But winter in Moscow was muddy and dirty, not like in Siberia he missed.
How he missed it was felt by his conversations and correspondence. And people in Moscow were unfriendly and aggressive. Ivan had a gallant trait for which he was loved in the north and not understood in Moscow. On March 8, he'd carry the pinks flowers to all women he knew, to all his friends' wives as well. Women were delighted. Once in the morning on March 8, which is also my daughter's birthday, by the way, somebody rang at our door's bell. And I was busy with well, you understand, right? I opened the door. Ivan was there. He brought some flowers to my wife. I motioned Ivan in, took his flowers to the addressee, my wife, and Ivan ran away. He must have figured it all out. Then he called me and apologized for his so untimely visit. I told him not to worry. He shouldn't have run away. I wanted to have some beer with him. When he tried to do the same on March 8 in Moscow, the surprised women would stare back at him, trying to understand what that all was supposed to mean. Nothing, stupids. Just wanted to be nice to you. And Moscow has killed that one of our hussars' gallant habit. What a shame. It was his nice habit he used to have. Back in 2004 in Raduzhny, I bought a fantastically beautiful and avant-garde looking Nissan Primera car. The Nissan car manufacturer was in its best. At the same time, if you remember, it started producing the Murano SUV cars, another one impossible to tear one's eyes off. I had to sell it, however, in 5 years to buy an apartment in Niche. Ivan easily brought this company's income up in Moscow. The country was about to start booming in its real estate market. He had a nice secretary who freed him of all his correspondence paperwork routine. After my remarks, he seemed to be afraid to write anything to anyone. And he was talented with his management skills. There was a reason he rose to sergeant in the army. And his salary had caught up with mine, and there was no stopping for him now. And he was bolting up together with someone to open up his own appraisal company. In one of Oksana's phone calls, she, for the first time, appeared to talk high about her Ivan. It sure wasn't her admiration yet, but her satisfaction. The trend was being changed. At the same time, Moscow was disappointing Oksana in the sense that Moscow was ignoring her. In Raduzhny, she was prominent and influential. In Moscow, she was just one of the many, yet younger and more beautiful ones with language skills. In companies where she worked, her ebullient initiatives were either ignored or angrily rejected. She would leave the company, take another job, and start all over again. Ivan, in the meantime, founded his partner his own appraisal company in Moscow, with a branch in Belgorod city, and he started getting something from the construction and the real estate market boom. He had upgraded from Liana to Tiana, and you know what? I felt that I was starting to envy Ivan. I had always believed I was smarter than he, and not being as naive as he was. I speak and write, as you see it, fluent English. I have a bona fide higher education, not some kind of training courses at the University of Economics. I write competently and will express my thoughts, and in general, I am a walking encyclopedia. And I, after all, have some music literacy and even compose a little bit. However, it was him, not me, who was the foreman in the army, and I, the fool, was a private there all along. Yes, I had a good reputation in my platoon, even in the company, but anyway, I was a nobody in the army. It was him, not me, who married a beautiful and intelligent woman. Ivan, however, would love to have more children, but it wasn't up to him. But, oh well. Even the apartment in Raduzhny they didn't buy as we did, but were given free to them by the state. And they very successfully moved to Moscow and generally got settled there, not so bad. Now he had his own business that even his wife admired him, and she was now in some subordinate position to him. Finally, though with reservations, he had become his family boss now, which was important for a man who grew up in a village. Neither them in Moscow nor us in Nish had any new friends of ours. That probably was our ages to be attributed to. Ivan, he is a good man, but still was too naive. Even before Putin, when such odious figures like Primakov and Lushkov moved up into the Russian political arena, the Putin's background looked quite respectable when compared to theirs. You can Google them if interested. I was done with them years ago. Ivan wholeheartedly supported these politicians, and we almost fought with him because of this. That was for the first time. I wondered, was the one-person, one-vote democracy system really that good if guys like Ivan are voting? Now I am, by the way, a big skeptic of such a democracy. Democracy, except age limitation, must still have some property or minimum income requirements. So his or her voice was more responsible, like the shareholder's voice or something. Then I was horrified a bit with Ivan many years later, in 2007, when Russia won the Sochi Olympic Games bid. It was okay with me. All were happy, even now to some degree, but when Ivan was convulsing in his letters on how Putin was the great genius and that he gave us a good life and blah blah blah, I was really scared. I coldly noted him that a good life wasn't in fact that good, and it wasn't him who gave it to us, but the oil prices which rose unprecedentedly high, and later they then doubled up by the time Putin attacked Georgia. Again, life was not that good, but the corruption under Putin's rules has increased by orders of magnitude. Again, we had a fight. In the meantime, Ivan bought him his second car, an SUV, and gave his Tiana to his wife. Life is not fair, and my stable life was coming to an end. I had 2 expensive surgeries on my eyes, cataracts. This is my inheritance from my mother's side. Then I was downsized in the company. The department in which I worked was disbanded. I had to go back to translating again, and the demand for translators was no longer stable and constantly decreasing due to global technological change. I've been 3 times to Ivan's place in Moscow. Twice when I was on my business trip, and once with my family on vacation. Well, they lived in Rublovsky-Uspensky highway all right. The apartment was nice too. Nice, but not much better than mine in Nish, while 5 times more expensive. Ivan never told me much about his work, but I had an impression that after his peaks in 2008, his business didn't grow much, and he even had to go through some sort of optimization. They had to sell the Belgrade affiliate branch. Later they sold the Tiana too. They were doing not bad, of course, but neither had I noticed any special prosperity with them. I mean, after I visited Moscow, I no longer envied Ivan. They could have done better in Moscow. And in conversation we had, especially on Oksana's side, I felt some disappointment in the air. And I had another 2 very expensive eye surgeries, retinal detachment. I was paying off for my riotous youth. I kept in touch with him until mid-20s. Then, after another conversations about politics, I decided to end any relationship with him. Enough is enough. He was really stupid. I told him that if such a semi-gangster country as ours is a breeding ground for all such bad things as corruption, excessive aggression, and inadequate behavior with its neighbors, the country that threatens the very existence of the world with nuclear annihilation, then let it fall into several independent countries. It will be better this way. To which he replied that I didn't love my homeland and that the Americans were to blame for everything. Also, I told him that thanks to Putin and his policy, this country had no future. He kept checking stock prices to successfully invest in something. What a stupid kind of a person he must be if he was unable to understand that investing in this country was the same as he simply would throwing his money away. It was not my business. It was his money he was risking with, but I felt that I didn't want to have anything with such a short-sighted person he was. I notified him of that and removed him from all my contacts. I no longer stay in touch with him. I hope he is all right.